Welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, and good afternoon. I have put together a short graphic novel for you. I know it's a bit weird, but things being what they are, graphic novels surely won't be taken down for hate speech. So our story starts in a dark underground cavern with some Arabs planning and scheming for the future. They think that Europe, Britain and America own the entire world and it should be theirs. Galar, their god, has given it to them, so we must have therefore stolen it. And they teach this doctrine to their children amongst the knowledge of weapons and how to kill people with the backstab. And in doing so they excite the children who think they are going to be heroes, martyred at the altar of Galar, the great merciful god. So we have old men planning for war out of the view of the world, living in hidden tunnels beneath the ground, teaching their children that the rest of the world are thieves, and that is the only reason they live in war and poverty. It is always the fault of the foreigners. Now, obviously kids aren't stupid, they're going to have questions, they're going to have moral quandaries, but they are very quickly solved by saying, Galar the Merciful has commanded you. You don't want to argue with God, do you? And so they decide that the best place to mount their attacks is from a hospital where they hide the weapons and the children who are going to use the weapons, and they plan to attack the city below. A merciless attack commanded by Galar. And sure enough, the attack comes and the counter-attack comes. Any injured of the child soldiers will appear as just a regular child now, with the face revealed and the weapons removed. Thus they are turned into a prop for news and media to film. And this is how propaganda works. They show you one face while describing another, and you in your own imagination conflate the two and invent the rest of the story in your own mind. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the hospital has weapons, and they use those weapons to fire on the town below, and then they are bombed by military forces who are targeting the weapons inside the hospital behind the child soldiers. And then this, when it is successful, is verily cheered by the surviving nation who have ended the threat of the weapons hidden inside the hospital. But the news and media don't report that. They report dead soldiers as dead children, and they say nothing of the weapons, in order that the people who own the news and media, the same Arabs that were in the tunnel plotting, scheming and wanting the war, can continue unharmed and unhindered. So I hope you enjoyed my propaganda-style propaganda video about propaganda. So let's go through it. What you saw there was a kind of, in a roundabout way, summarisation of what's happening at the moment in the Middle East. The Arabs, who are the extremist terrorists, they know that they have to teach their children to fight this war for them and then hide. If they fight the war, they'll be killed immediately. And no one will care. Everyone will rejoice. Everyone knows these guys are bad guys. They look like bad guys. They sound like bad guys. The things that they are openly saying, in the mind of a moral, regular person, makes them bad. You want them to be killed in a war because they are trying to kill you in a war that they want. You don't want a war. I don't want a war. They want the war. So they train their children, propagandize them with this false doctrine, the Quran of the Muslims, from a very young age, to think that this is moral and good, and that if they don't do this, kill the Westerners. The very existence of these evil Westerners who were born bad, remember Galar sealed the evil into their hearts and they can never do anything about it. Their very existence upon the earth is the thing that is preventing Galar's great paradise from appearing, thus signaling the end of war, poverty and everything else. And they get virgins. You know, they're only kids. They've not seen a bunch of virgins like that. They've never seen holy virgins. So that's the thing that they are looking forward to getting through killing these Westerners. And that's what they do. So the children dressed as soldiers with the face coverings on, the Galar is great thing on their head, you know, the rocket launchers, AK-47s, they go and they kill the Westerners, the Israelis, the Christians, the white people. And then they return to base because they did a backstabbing attack. They never admit when they're going to do this. They don't say they're going to do this. They just do it and then they scurry off in the night. And some of them get killed and some of them are injured. And the ones that are injured go back to the place they started in where all the weapons are stored. You know, the hospitals. That's where they store their weapons. And then they take off the face coverings, they take off the weapons, and they put on a hospital gown, and they have nurses and doctors around them. That is the part you see on the camera. Those same people who the night before were carrying guns and bombs and killing civilians and shouting Allahu Akbar, doing all that Arab stuff, that's the same people you see in the photos and the videos of the hospitals with the injured kids. And that's how they get you. So half of what they're telling you is true. It is children some of the time which are carrying these injuries. They were injured by Israeli bullets and bombs. But the thing they don't tell you is the reason they were there in front of the bullets and bombs getting shot at and bombed by the Israelis is because they had their faces covered and they were running at civilians in the middle of the night with guns, planning to kill as many of them as they can, sometimes rape them. That's their orders. That is their military orders to do that. That's why they're doing that. So, of course, while they're doing that, they are military targets. If you run at someone with a weapon and they've got a weapon, guess what? They're going to shoot you. After they've shot you and then they peel away your face covering, realise you're a child, they are going to be very sad about this. But they're still going to shoot you in future if you come back with your face covered, brandishing weapons, shouting Galah Akbar. It's just how it goes. It's the survival instinct we have. We're not going to let people roll over and just murder us all. Certainly not for some false doctrine. Thus we have the creation of the war propaganda. So they show you half of the truth and then they tell you half of the story. And you put the half of the truth and half of the story together and you fill in the blanks with your own imagination. And then you have in your own mind decided what happened. So you know it's true because you physically got there with your own intelligence. And that is exactly why they do it. Meanwhile, the guys scheming and planning this are completely safe in their tunnels. You don't see them running into battle shouting Galah Akbar. You don't see them getting shot for the glory of their god. No. They just hide in their little tunnels, giving out the orders. Well, someone's got to preach through those big towers, the call to prayer towers. Somebody has to be at the end of those. They never run out of guys to do that, do they? It's those guys hiding in the tunnels that are doing that part. And it's the poor, doctrinated children who are going to do the scary, dangerous part where they get killed or injured. And the entire reason they do this is because they know, A, we would never support their cause if they were open and honest and they actually read us their cause out of the Quran. We would never support that. If they sent their old men rather than their children, we would see them as bad and they would be immediately killed and nobody would mind. We'd be rejoicing at the loss of terrorism, the defeat of terrorism. And there would be a conclusive end to the war. But the way that they play their game with this hiding in tunnels, dressing up the hospital as a hospital when it actually has loads of weapons in there, and it's a training school for jihadis, doing it that way means they can never openly be defeated, and they can drag the war out indefinitely, and that is what their goal is. That's why you have propaganda. Propaganda is a tool of the military to drag an engagement out in order to give them more time to build up resources and to pick off more of the enemy. That's why they do it. And it brings me back to this book here, the Quran of the Muslims. As far as I'm concerned, this entire book is military propaganda. There's nothing truthful or honest in here. There's nothing, as it claims, glorious or truthful or honourable. No. Nothing at all. And the proof of that is history. If you know anything about history, Medina used to be a colony of Israelites. That's who was there first. Not because the Israelites went in and went to war with anyone. It was a place where nobody was living. It was like a horrible desert. You couldn't live there. So the Israelites went in and farmed the land and made it habitable. Roll forward 250 years, Muhammad goes in with his troops and kills everybody. And takes it over and makes it a Muslim country. And then the Muslim nations emanated out of that point. So now the Arabs say, this is our land. Despite the fact that it wasn't always their land. They came from another place. And via Muhammad conquested into that place. But you don't hear anyone saying, oh, let's kick all the Arabs out of Arabia, do you? No, we wouldn't dream of it. It would be morally wrong. Not because they were always living there. They weren't. We already went through. Muhammad was the reason they conquested in there and got there. But in terms of today's people, none of the people living there today were alive back then. The people living there today were born there and do deserve to live there, and we want to preserve their peace to live there. So then why do they feel the need to hide in tunnels and send their children to war dressed as soldiers and dress up their military training camps and their weapon emplacements as hospitals? Well, it's for the propaganda machine, isn't it? And also, if you have a class of 20 children and you are teaching your children about war and weapons and you're training them with orders to go and kill Jews, they're going to be scared. Of course they are, they're children. Anyone would be scared of that, especially a child. So you say to them, I'll read you what God has told you about this attack. God has told you, never fear death, don't fear these evil demons, I will protect you if you go and kill them. And the proof, if you need it, is we're already in a hospital. That's where we do our attacks from. Our war attack base is a hospital. So you leave from here in perfect health, go and do a quick overnight raid, come running back, and where are you coming running back to? A hospital. It's perfect. Apart from it's completely immoral, and it results in the deaths of thousands of children. Not because Israelis are targeting children. There's no military value in targeting children. Nobody would waste the time and money targeting children when they are at war. Their whole nation is under threat. But what they will do is target weapon emplacements, training camps, ammo stores, and soldiers. That's what they're targeting. And it just so happens that the enemy is using children as soldiers, using the hospital as a military training camp and an ammo store. And therefore it has used the injured soldiers who come back and the hospital as a human shield to put on top of the weapons and the soldiers, knowing that that then puts the Israelis in the position where they can either do nothing and accept defeat and have their whole nation destroyed, all their sons and daughters will die, or they can shoot through the human shield and end the war conclusively, so that at least in future there can be peace and there can be a chance of the enemy, training their kids with maths and science or arts or literature, something which doesn't result in their deaths. So the Israeli soldiers have accepted bearing the cross of everybody's complaints, bearing the cross of the propaganda. They have accepted they're going to be heavily criticised in order that they can safeguard their nation and defend their own sons and daughters. They're going to have to shoot through injured soldiers to get to the non-injured soldiers. That's the way the Islamic Jihad works. But if they don't do that, the Islamic jihadis and their children, who remember are brainwashed, propagandized from a young age to think this is right and moral, not only will they beat the Israelis, they will feel vindicated. They'll feel like this is the way to win a war. This is the art of war, if you like. So once they have proven themselves against the Israelis by beating the Israelis, do you think they'll go back to their hospital and go, right, 1-0 guys, that's it, the war's over? Or do you think they will carry on servicing the commands of Galah, the great, merciful God, out of this book, and they will continue to get rid of all the thieves of the rest of the world? Because remember, that's what they believe and what they teach to their children. Islam teaches that the rest of the world is actually property of Allah, and he gives it to only Muslims. Everything in those countries and all their women and children should belong to Muslims. That's what it says in this book. And the only reason why they don't currently possess that stuff is because everybody else on the world, all other countries, all other nations and faiths, are thieves, mischief makers. That's how it's described in here. We are thieves and mischief makers, the worst of creatures. That's what they call us. Everyone else. So the children think, in order for us to be heroes, martyrs to our God, the great Galah, we need to rid the world of these thieves and these mischief makers, and then we can have peace. But they don't realise, because they're only children, what they have just said to themselves is, to be a martyr of my God Galah, I have to kill every single other person on earth who is not part of my little clique. I have to go and invade every other country and successfully kill them all until there is nobody remaining except Arab Islamic Muslims. So there can never be peace that way. Because the only way there can ever be peace is when everybody's dead, apart from Arab Islamic Muslims. And we know that is never going to happen, because although their doctrine, the art of war, and the Quran teaches them that this is a way to gain peace, they underestimate their enemies constantly. because they think they are nothing but demonic, evil thieves. We know that's not true. The Israelis have the most advanced army on earth. We've seen that over the last few months. America has a huge military might. It is unequalled in the world. They're not going to go down without a fight. Britain's military, although it has seen better times, is still one of the four most well-trained, well-equipped armies in the world. And that's just to name a few. So how do you think the world is going to look when these Islamic terrorists get to sending their child soldiers with sort of 1980s cloned weapons, not good strategies or tactics, when they get to sending those soldiers against bigger, more aggressive militaries? Because although they claim Israel are horrible, evil, aggressive militaries, Israel have held back. Israel have showed them so much grace. And it has allowed them to drag the war on. I can tell you now, if I was in command of the Israeli army, this war would have been over 10 months ago. I wouldn't have waited this long. I wouldn't have cared about the propaganda view or what everyone's complaints were. I would have marched my entire army straight in there and crushed them in a week. And then put my flag in the ground there and said, we own this now. And I wouldn't have cared about anyone's complaints, because at the end of the day, I am in control of my country's safety. And if this country here wants to constantly attack me decade after decade after decade, and in order to do so, brainwash its own children out of their peace, out of their life that they would have previously had, and commit their children to a lifetime of insurgency and war, then I think I can do a better job for those children. And I will take over that country so that I can put those children through regular schooling. I can teach them English, maths, science. I can teach them sociology. I can teach them cultural studies. I can show them different languages of the world. I can show them the world. I can send them on field trips so they can travel. I can introduce them to their enemies' children and say, look, just give them a chance. You'll probably get on with them. And the only things that I will ban them from doing is going to war with people based on a religious doctrine when they haven't done anything, and claiming that other countries are their belongings because Allah has told them so. Think about it. How would the world look if something like that was their doctrine rather than this thing? Sure, it'd be a lot more peaceful. But we can't tell these guys what to do because they are allowed to have their own culture, they're allowed to have their wars, and they're allowed to make enemies of us all. They're allowed to brainwash their children and hide their weapons inside of hospitals and then propagandize us all. They're allowed to do that. But make no mistake, the result of this will be defeat for them. And it's just sad that they have to throw all their children into a meat grinder, and their women, and their whole country, in order to recognise that this is not a good strategy. If it were a good strategy, it would have worked in the past. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They've never done anything else. So if it was a good strategy, why are they able to say, oh, the evil American and Britain and European colonial powers own the world? How did that happen? How did that happen if their military strategy was as successful as they claim when they're teaching it to their children? Why are they backed against the wall in one location, one tiny little corner of the world, still doing the same thing? Perhaps they should adopt Western tactics, negotiation, allies, rather than racism, genocide, hiding in hospitals, child soldiers, and slavery of their wives. Then they wouldn't have to die. But like I say, it's a free world. They can do what they want. If they want to pick up guns and give them to their children, then we will just have to endure that. And I think that's what we're going to see in the coming months as this war builds steam and drags other countries in. So in summary, that's the end of this video. Just remember, not everything you see on the news is completely false. But the narrative they give you is false because they are taking half of a story, they are taking half of what it looks like on the ground, and they are marrying those two halves together to make a new whole, a Frankenstein story, if you like, and then allowing you to use that false narrative to paint the rest of what's happening based on social media. And they have people on social media parroting, paid propagandists effectively telling you what to think. But like I always say, don't judge a person based on what they say about what they do. Judge them on what they actually do. Judge their behaviour. And we know these guys behave like absolute animals and have no problem sending their children to death enslaving their wives, and racially attacking the rest of the world while claiming victim status and saying everybody else is at fault. But notice, they never take responsibility for anything. Never. They just lie constantly. So keep that in mind as we go into the more propagandizing period of the war, which is going to be the next 6 months. Make sure you check everything personally. Don't listen to the news. Don't listen to celebs on social media. Don't even listen to me. Don't listen to anyone. Look at the evidence on both sides. Dig for it. They're not going to give it to you willingly. You will have to make effort to find it. Assess it fairly, one side versus the other, and then make your own mind up once you have done that. Don't let them tell you, here's both sides, here's the conclusion. That's propaganda. And it's the same with me. If you don't believe any of the things that I have said or suggested in my video, feel free to go and check them out yourself, but check out both sides fairly and accurately and then make your own mind up. You are intelligent enough to do this without needing the TV news or social media celebrities to tell you how to think. And once you know the truth, you will feel better about the way things are going, and you will have more faith in a good conclusion for these events. And I pray that you do. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all, and I'll see you lovely people in the next one. Bye now. And many thanks to ChatGPT for supplying those images. All I had to do was say, give me images of Israelis dressed up as Arab terrorists. Then it was happy to. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed that. God bless you all. And I'll see you lovely people in the next one. Bye now. Bye bye bye.